Wellness Wednesday. My internet has already tried to reconnect once, so hopefully I don't have any issues with this episode. Good morning, happy Wednesday. If you were wondering, I am currently trying to embody a penguin. The only thing I really need on this is some white to make it look more penguin-esque. Basically, I got this awesome pajama hoodie from my boutique. It showed up yesterday from my online boutique, and I'm just loving it. It kind of, while I'm currently trying to embody a penguin, as you can see, what it kind of puts me in mind of is the night dress, if you will, that Ebenezer Scrooge wore. These were a thing. Everybody wore nightgowns back in the day. This isn't really a nightgown. This is more of just a cozy hoodie that's kind of a dress. I would call it the modern day version of a house coat. Anyway, so today I am Donna the Penguin coming at you to talk about Wellness Wednesday. Anyway, that's my comic relief for the moment. If you're here, let me know you're here, because Facebook doesn't always show me all the things. So sometimes you're watching and sometimes you're making comments and asking questions, and I don't always see them. So if that's the case, that doesn't mean I want you to stop asking questions, and I promise I'm not ignoring you. But I will answer them after it's over if I don't see them while I'm live. Sometimes I get a glimpse of one or two while I'm live. Other times it's like nobody in the world exists until I get done. And then I've got like 10 questions, comments, whatever. In any case, definitely interact, because you never know when I'm going to see it, and I will definitely respond afterwards. So if you're just stumbling on my page, my name is Donna. I am normally not a penguin, but I am a wellness advocate and a mom and a nana and a girlfriend, a runner, jazzerciser, and I am working on my Master of Science in Clinical Mental Health Counseling. And I started Wellness Wednesday because I've been in a lifelong journey with depression and anxiety, sometimes even crippling social anxiety. And over time, as I've journeyed into recovery, I have found that sharing tips and tricks with other people, also known as peer wisdom, just sharing experiences and what has worked and what it hasn't, makes a huge difference, not just for me, but for others as well. So, just to reiterate, I am not a licensed mental health counselor yet. And everything I share here is based on my experience, my research, and that's that. So I invite you, as you're listening, that if you have tips or tricks or thoughts about something I'm talking about, to please share. We do try to keep it negative. We do try to keep it politics free. Just if you're, like I said, if you're just stumbling on this page, then welcome. I hope you enjoy it and come back for more. In the meantime, if you've been following me for a while, then you saw last week's video, which was Silent Nights Are Not a Luxury, and it was about learning to sit in silence. So it's been it kind of turned into an unintentional series about quieting the noise and finding presence and joy in the moment, which is appropriate for this time of year, but also appropriate for year round. And then last week, I also challenged you to spend 10 minutes with no input, like a 10-minute no input pause, where you weren't scrolling, you didn't have a sound machine, no people, no talking, no screens, no white noise, no extra stimulation whatsoever. It's really hard, isn't it? And to just breathe and be still in the quiet room or in your car before you go into work or the grocery store. And I asked you to share with me what you came up with when you finally got some real silence. Was there any kind of thought or something that maybe you had forgotten about that came up for you that is important now? And like I said, we've been talking a lot. This all falls under the umbrella of what I call self-care, which is not the same as mani-pedis. Those are also self-care, but kind of more of a self-pampering. When I talk about self-care, I'm typically talking about quieting the noise and sitting in silence and finding awe and, just really spending time with yourself, which I think is really important. So with that said, my school term just finished up last week, and it was, for me, particularly more brutal than other school terms that I've had. It was probably the hardest one for me thus far in my program, because there was a lot of personal experience in there. and a lot of personal things that got brought back up. And then additionally, there was a lot of confusion over assignment instructions and things like that. So I'm grateful to have finished with an A. But it was, I felt a little dicey there. And this is the first term since I started the program where I have more than once thought, am I doing the right thing? Am I on the right path? Where I started to doubt a little bit. So that was kind of a big deal. And that just added a layer of stress to this school term. I was able to finish it by having the grandkids overnight and spent time with them and my boyfriend. We decorated the tree on Saturday morning. They spent the night Friday night. We went and looked at neighborhood lights. We just had fun, and it was truly a blessing. And it put me in mind of how different things look for me now. And it's literally, I mean, my boyfriend has been putting up the tree for the last few years pretty much by himself because I have been so busy with one thing or another, my online boutique, my schooling, whatever, that I haven't been able to really make time to help much with that. And I realized as I was watching them all sit in front of the tree, setting up the nativity together, how important it is to really make that time, even if it looks a little different than what it did before. And sometimes we avoid making that time because we know it's not going to look the same. We know it's not going to look the same. And so we struggle to make the time to do those important, meaningful things. So with that said, it was kind of a long school term. It was still only 10 weeks, but it felt longer. And while I was able to finish it up with him and the grandkids decorating the tree and having a great weekend, I'm still tired. I'm kind of mentally tired. So with that said, I will not be on for Wellness Wednesday next week for a couple of reasons. And one of those is because of a new thing that has kind of become an unintentional tradition. So our local bowling alley, if you're local to me, it's Citrus Lanes over on 41. They do a bowling and breakfast with Santa every year. Good morning, Miss Stacy. And it's pretty cool. We've been going ever since the first one. And it's just fun, and it's a reasonable price per person that includes breakfast and 2 games of bowling. And it's Christmas Eve morning, and then Santa makes an appearance, which is awesome. And so it's just a lot of fun. And like I said, the first time it happened, it was, I only knew about it because I was line dancing at the bowling alley at that time. So I was tuned into everything they had going on. And I think this is now the 4th or 5th year. And it really has become a tradition because now I'm like on their page 2 days before Thanksgiving, like, when are you announcing it? Are you still doing it? When is it going to be up so that I can register? And then I'm taking a head count to see who can join us, that year. So like I said, it's kind of become a tradition. It's a lot of fun. It looks different every single year. Since we're on the subject of traditions, even though this has become a tradition for us, and I'd love it to stay that way because I think it's a lot of fun and it's a great way to spend Christmas Eve morning if you don't have to work. But every year it looks a little different. Like this will be the first year that my granddaughter's been able to join us, because her schedule's a little split. And so for whatever reason, or for one reason or another, it's just never fallen when she could come with us. And they're like this year, my daughter and my son-in-law won't be able to join us because they'll have to work. Whereas like the first or second year we did it, Eric's sister was in town and she joined us. So like I said, every year it looks a little bit different. Sometimes we have both of them. Sometimes we only have one of them. Sometimes we have both my daughter and my son-in-law. Sometimes we only have one of them. So it looks a little different every year. And that's actually awesome because the core of it's still there. And the core of it is not the bowling and it's not the breakfast. It's the time spent together in a meaningful way on Christmas Eve morning. And then, so that's kind of what started this today's topic. And then I think about Lane, and for those of you that are following my page and following my posts about Lane, it's my niece, I guess kind of once removed because it's my sister-in-law's niece. She's 5 years old. She just got transferred from pediatric ICU to a intensive rehab program. after suffering significant brain swelling from something called MOGAD encephalitis and also meningitis at the same time. And so she has a long road ahead of her. And I guarantee you that her family never, for 1 second before she was admitted in October, thought that they would be spending the Christmas season in a whole other state. And that their kids would have to be waiting until Christmas break at school, their other children, to join them. And so everything looks different for them right now. And it's probably going to look different for a long time. And I know this family, and I know how strong their faith is, and I know that they will find a way to make meaning out of every minute they can, regardless of the circumstances. And that's kind of what we're talking about today. So I'm continuing to pray for Lane. I hope you will too, and I'll continue to update as long as I can. So, and then part of this is, I was put in mind when I was getting ready for this. And if I sound a little all over the place, just bear with me. I'm going somewhere with all of this. I was kind of put in mind of something from my previous career, that I retired from in 2022. I met a man once who frequently referred to bananas in the Jell-O. And out of everything, when he was here working in the county, this is the one thing that stuck with me. Probably because at the time, everybody thought it would be funny if I made Jell-O with bananas in it to bring to a meeting that he was coming to, which I didn't understand at the time until he explained the analogy. Because everybody heard him say bananas in the Jell-O a lot, they thought that he loved Jell-O with bananas in it, and that wasn't the case. So what the real story was that he used banana in the Jell-O, or bananas in the Jell-O, or fruit in the Jell-O as an analogy for things that we put in place that then we act like we can't take out. And we put these things in place, and then they tell us we live by them, and we're like, we can't do that, or we can't do this because of the fruit that we put in the Jell-O. So let me explain that a little bit further. So his analogy was that he hated fruit in the Jell-O, and his wife always served fruit in the Jell-O, and he really didn't like it. And when he suggested that he wanted Jell-O without fruit, she looked at him like he had 10 heads. And I'm paraphrasing, and I'm doing this from memory over several years, so the story may have changed a little in my head. But essentially, she looked at him like 10 heads, and she was like, but it's in there. You have to eat it. I thought you liked it. What is the problem? And he's like, but you put the fruit in the Jell-O so you can take it out. And he often used this to refer to rules, in general, rules that we put into county government, rules that we put into, organization management, rules that we put into anything. Rules and traditions sometimes get looked at kind of the same way. These things that we place in our lives, in ourselves, in our habits, that we're then like, well, I can't do that because of this. And his point was, those are bananas in the Jell-O. If you don't want them in the Jell-O, take them out of the Jell-O. Don't put them in there to begin with. The point being that sometimes we have a lot more control than we think we do if we stop looking at it as something we have to do just because that's the way it's always been done. Does that make a little more sense now? Do you see the tie-in? So this time of year, so basically it's a we put them in, so why can't we take them out type thing. And this time of year, a lot of us are realizing that tradition doesn't always land neatly on the calendar, and the calendar doesn't always cooperate with us and our traditions and our habits. But that doesn't make it any less meaningful, right? So why is this coming up for so many people? Well, it comes up more and more. I see people talking about it on Facebook, and I've experienced the headlong race into Christmas Day where you're trying to visit 4 different family homes, sometimes across the state, if not across the county from each other. And we look at it differently this time of year because the family unit looks different. The family unit looks different and often involves much more extended family, which just for the record is not a bad thing. Family structure looks different now. We are more accepting of people who are not biologically related to us as family members, and sometimes even choose those over people that are biologically related to us. When the family unit looks different, there's an opportunity for a much bigger spread of love, and for just more family in general. But that can also lead to a lot more stress when you're trying to honor traditions, holiday traditions, with all of those people. So like I said, the typical holiday marathon usually involves shared holidays, travel delays, health issues, work fires still going off, even when you're not supposed to be there, drained energy, and a lot of pressure for this one specifically to celebrate on the or an official day that may not even be historically accurate. And I'm not going to get too far into those weeds, because that may start a political conversation we don't want to have. But many holidays that we celebrate by the calendar are absolutely unrelated to the day we celebrate them. It becomes more of a symbolic thing. And if it's symbolic, then that means it can be celebrated at any time that it's meaningful for you. So, like I said, sometimes they're not even historically accurate. And then what comes behind that is the guilt. Sometimes that's guilt we place on ourselves. Sometimes that's guilt we get from others when it doesn't line up with the calendar and we just can't do it. We just can't make all the things work together in the same day or in the same 2 days or whatever. For example, I get to visit my mom this weekend. I frequently, because of my school schedule, don't get down to see my mom. A lot of times the only time I see her, or we see her, is when she comes here, because it's hard for me to travel during a school term. So we made it a point, after I realized that I hadn't seen them for like at least 2 Thanksgivings, and, the last time we tried to go down there for Christmas, either they or we ended up sick beforehand and couldn't make it work. So what does that mean? Well, we're not going to be down there on Christmas Day. We have things going on here. We have bowling with Santa on Christmas Eve with the grandkids. And we're not going to be down there on Christmas Day. Does it mean that if we go this weekend, it's any less meaningful? No, in fact, it's probably more meaningful regardless of the day, because we actually took the time to make the trip down there. It's not that far. It's like a couple hours. Because we actually took the time to make the trip down there. And when the last time that we were down that way was when she was in the hospital, actually, which was at least a year ago. So again, sometimes even the calendar doesn't cooperate, and sometimes we carry guilt for that. We're like, we just can't do it, just can't get there this year, just can't get here this year, just don't have the energy, too sick, can't do it. And somehow all of these things, some of which are beyond our control, turn into massive amounts of guilt that we carry. So let's talk about traditions for a minute. Because a lot of times that's what we're tied to. It's not the calendar as much as it's these traditions that are tied to calendar dates that we think are like rules that we have to follow. We treat them like they're laws when they're really just bananas in the jello. So traditions are meant to connect and ground us and to mark meaningful things, period. They are not meant to exhaust us, to divide us, or to create stress, resentment, and guilt suitcases that we carry around with us. That traditions are meant to serve people, not the other way around. A lot of times we end up serving them. We serve the traditions, we serve the calendar. We forget about the point of it. But traditions also evolve, just like our families evolve. Our families evolve constantly. We have children. They grow up. They get married. They have grandchildren. When they get married, there's now more extended family that time has to be shared with. No matter how the family unit started, if it started with marriage, if it started with a domestic partnership, whatever it looks like, as those families evolve and include new people, then traditions also evolve, and they have to, or they don't survive, or everybody gets angry. That's essentially what the 2 things boil down to. Good morning, Miss Destiny. So they shift, traditions evolve and shift just like life does. Celebrating early, celebrating a holiday early or late or the day of, or split with someone else doesn't have to dilute the meaning unless we let it. It can also protect our peace and our relationships instead of straining them if we are more flexible with the timing and less strict about making sure that those bananas are in the Jell-O. And if you're just joining me and you don't know what I'm talking about, you should go back to the beginning to understand that analogy. So, like I said, celebrating early, late, day of doesn't have to change the meaning or dilute the meaning unless we let it. The meaning behind Christmas was never about precision timing or deadlines, but rather presence, humility, and shining a light where and whenever we have the opportunity. Merry Christmas to you, Miss Destiny. Whenever and wherever we have the opportunity. That meaning doesn't disappear just because it doesn't line up with the calendar we're looking at. I promise. So each season looks a little different for me too. My kids get older. My grandkids get older. One day, that's going to look like great-grandchildren. It's going to look totally different again. Each season looks a little different. And that's why I'm taking next Wednesday off, because I want to be fully present. It just so happens the Christmas Eve, this new tradition, this bowling with Santa with my grandkids, it's going to fall on Wednesday morning. And I also have seized the opportunity to make a big spaghetti dinner for the kids when they come to pick them up, so that they don't have to worry about seeing us on Christmas Day, because there's so much other family. And for us too. So for next Wednesday, there will be no Wellness Wednesday, but that's why. It's because I'm choosing to be present in a way that works for me. And that means the calendar is flexible. And I know you guys are too, because you might have something that you were kind of hemming and hawing about doing that day, in that time. And I'm not saying you would have chosen to watch Wellness Wednesday over that, but hopefully listening to me talk about this makes you think, you know what? I was hesitant. It's out of my comfort zone. Doesn't line up with my schedule, but whatever it is, I'm going to do it anyway. And if this helped you make that decision, then that's fantastic. So if the old traditions aren't working because they don't line up with the calendar, or they don't line up with what feels comfortable to you and what feels aligned with what you're doing now, it's okay to modify them. It's okay to start new ones. This bowling with Santa in Christmas Eve morning just literally materialized out of nowhere, but it was fun, so we did it again. And then we did it again. And then I'm like, hey, are you doing it again this year? Answer me, send me the information, let me register. So it kind of was an unintentional tradition, and that's what I meant when I said that at the beginning when I first got on. So if the current traditions aren't working, consider modifying them. Let them be flexible. Create new ones. It keeps us from being rigid, and it allows us to evolve as life and our families and our situations evolve, and allows us to be more adaptable, which means we're going to be more open-minded. So think about that for a minute. Like the bananas in the Jell-O, we put those requirements, we put those traditions and those timelines that we're tied to, we put those in the Jell-O. We can take them out. We control what's in there, okay? So I'm going to invite you today to ask yourself, what traditions are you doing that still fit? What traditions are you doing that need flexibility and adaptation, that maybe just don't work the same way anymore? And it freaks you out a little, but you know that it would be better if you just made a little tweak here or there. And what is the thing that matters the most when the timing doesn't line up? So I'm going to wrap this up now. I just want to leave you with a few of these reminders. Traditions can change shape. They can change schedule. They can change all those things without losing their meaning. It's up to us to still find that meaning and make that meaning when it works for us and for everybody else. And then maybe the meaning increases or gets stronger as those things evolve. This season of gratitude and giving, it doesn't have to lose its heart just because the timing and location changes. We bring the heart if we choose to. That's the bananas we should be putting in the Jell-O. And just remember to be kind to others, because you don't know what tradition, what feeling, what memory they're clinging to that suddenly changed and they don't know, they're kind of directionless. You know what I mean? So remember to be kind to others because that's super important. And remember that what I'm talking about here applies all year long, not just at Christmas, not just at Thanksgiving, not just when you're doing the 400-mile trek back and forth across the county or the state to try to get everywhere in the same day. The meaning is whenever and wherever you make it, not according to the calendar. So I hope you found this helpful. Again, let me repeat, I challenge you to, or I invite you rather, to ask yourself what traditions are working, which ones need flexibility and adaptation, or maybe just to be stopped altogether, and what matters the most when timing doesn't work. Because those are the things that we should probably focus on in this next week and the rest of the year too. I know I'm going to be. So with that said, if you found this helpful, please consider sharing. You can also, just a reminder that I have a YouTube channel now. So if you want to watch any of my older videos, I have 2 from last year that I did, about 2 Christmas gifts you can give. And I'm probably going to drop those links in the comments. Or I might just wait to share them next week since I'm not going to be on. But however, whenever and wherever you celebrate, I wish you peace and meaning, whatever that looks like. And I wish you to be well. And I will see you again on the last day of the year, and we can kick off 2026 together. In the meantime, be well. And as I said, however you celebrate, I wish you peace and meaning and wellness and a Merry, Merry Christmas.